Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Mormon Stories Podcast. I'm your host, John DeLynn. It is October 8th, 2018, and we are a little bit somber and still always very excited to bring you another episode of Mormon Stories Podcast. Today, we are a day after sort of an epic general conference, Russell M. Nelson's second general conference, where they shortened from the 3-hour block to the 2-hour block. And where Elder Dallin H. Oaks gave what for many was a disturbing talk on LGBTQ individuals. And it is with a heavy heart that we are bringing to you today this interview. Today we are interviewing Dusty Johns. And the reason why we're doing this interview is because within a week prior to General Conference, Dusty and his partner, Tate, or at least Dusty, were served with papers notifying them of a disciplinary council. They have been same-sex married for around 5 months. Yeah. Dusty was in a mixed orientation marriage prior to same-sex marriage. He has 2 beautiful boys. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that's been interesting about Dusty and Tate is that they've been taking their sons to church, to their Idaho ward. Yeah. They've been wanting to attend as a couple, and they've been wanting to take Dusty's sons to church. And so I've been in touch with Dusty for several months, and we've been waiting to see how this would play out. And now we know how it's playing out. And so last week, Dusty was notified that he is being called before disciplinary council. So we are just wanting to make sure everybody knows that the LDS Church is enforcing the November 2015 policy. I was told by someone quite high up in the church who has connections at the very top that there was an informal cessation of enforcement of this policy, that was just a generally understood thing, that bishops weren't and stake presidents weren't to go after same-sex married couples in spite of the policy. And in fact, I have heard very little of people being excommunicated for being in same-sex marriages. But things are always moving in the Russell M. Nelson administration. And now we see that they are enforcing the November 2015 policy, or at least they're starting to or ramping up, or maybe it's just they're probably questioning it, but also maybe this is just a local matter. I don't know. Yeah. But we're here to interview Dusty and to learn a little bit about his background, and then to see how he feels about this disciplinary council. So, Dusty, welcome to Thanks, Mormon John. Stories Podcast.
I appreciate it.
Yeah. So, anything I get wrong in the introduction?
No, I think
okay.
It was all right.
Well, let's. I imagine this will be a 1 to 2 hour interview. We're not going to go 5-6 hours today. But let's just start. Tell us a bit about your Mormon upbringing, if you don't mind, and give us a sense for what the church has meant to you in your life.
You bet. So I grew up in Idaho. Church is pretty strong in Idaho.
What part?
It's southeast Idaho, Shelley. I'm from Shelley. And I grew up in Shelley, and my parents didn't go to church. My grandparents did. My parents did not. And I always felt some peace and some solace there. And so I would attend with my grandparents when I was really young. And then when I was 8, my bishops, my best friend's dad was a bishop. And so we'd go to their house. And I remember even being like 6 or 7, just realizing there was something different there. And so I took the missionary lessons, and my mom said I couldn't be baptized. And then I remember having a really vivid dream that I needed to ask again, and just randomly asked my mom again, and suddenly she said yes. And so
what age was this again?
It was right around 8. Okay. I was baptized a few weeks after my 8th birthday. Again, always went to church. I knew that I was gay when I was about 5. It was when the first memories. I didn't really know what sex was or anything, but I just knew that I was different. And so I always kind of used the church as a crutch, a buffer to try to help. I never wanted to be gay, did everything I possibly could to not be. And in Shelley was very involved in the seminaries and, preparing for my mission in the ward. I would never miss a Sunday. I would go alone. I would take myself and go alone. I'd had families along the way that would really support me. And I was kind of really relied on church. I remember when I got my mission call.
Really quick, did you do seminary?
I did. Oh, yeah. Yeah, every year. Graduated from seminary.
And were you the only, sibling in your family attending church?
Yep.
You had other siblings?
I did.
Okay.
I have siblings, but they never went.
You were the only one?
Only one.
And your teen years in the church, were you active in young men's, young women's?
Very active in everything.
Did you participate in the quorum, leadership, presidencies, kind of
all
thing?
of them. Presidencies almost in every quorum, and wouldn't miss a Tuesday, wouldn't miss a Sunday. Very, very active.
So you were very Orthodox.
Oh, very much so.
Even though your family was not.
Yeah. And again, I think for me, it was, I always noticed, I always wanted my family to be more like that, the church families, because it just seemed like they were happier and seemed like everything was good. And for me, again, the gay thing was I was very aware of the differences that I had, and I didn't want them. I did not want, I remember my youngest memory was being afraid that somebody would know that I was different. And so, I would go. I wouldn't miss a Sunday. I wouldn't miss a Tuesday. Got my mission call.
Right, sorry.
Yeah, that's fine.
So around age 13, 14 is when you start going through puberty and having this sort of, sexual awakening or whatever. Mm-hmm. What did you feel attraction to boys, men, whatever, and how did you deal with that?
I remember I was in 8th grade, and one of my friends we were in wrestling, and I remember I don't remember exactly what he was doing, but I remember that was the first time I was like, wait a second, there's more than just I like being around guys, this is something deeper. And feeling very afraid of that. There was another gay individual in my class who was very open and flamboyant, and for me, I didn't feel like I belonged anywhere, and so I really believed that, they get up at church and sacrament and conference and say, you have to be straight, you can do this, and God will give you the strength, and I totally believed that. I absolutely did.
So did you, in your heart or in your mind, internally have kind of assume the gay identity, or did you just say, I'm straight, I just
I forced it all
have
the way.
Same-sex attraction?
Yeah.
So you didn't think of yourself as gay as a teenager?
No.
You thought of yourself as straight? Mm-hmm. And was there anyone who ever maybe guessed it or wondered or asked you about it?
No. Matter of fact, I remember when I told my mom I was 24 years old. Or no, I was
We'll get
27.
there. We'll get there.
Okay. So my mission, right?
So did you would you say you had a traditional testimony in high school? Did you pray about the Book of Mormon? Did you pray to know the church was true?
Yeah, I felt like I had a good understanding that it was true, but I never really had a strong testimony to my mission. It was more built in other people, all my friends and other, I had adult leaders that were always just very, kind of would step in as a father figure. And so it was really rooted in that community, but I never questioned any of it. I just believed and wanted to be like everyone else.
Did you date girls in high school?
Yeah.
What was that like?
It was. I remember I didn't kiss anybody. I dated one girl for most of my high school years, and I remember I was a senior. We've been dating for like 18 months, and I didn't even kiss her. And I got pulled over, and I don't remember exactly what happened, but I kissed her, and we were like, oh, we just kissed. But there was nothing really for me sexually there. It was more an emotional relationship with her. And she waited for me on my mission.
So did you ever secretly, quietly try and date a boy or anything like that?
No, I remember one time my dad was gone and I got on a web chat site. It was back in the day when it was just like Yahoo chats. You remember those? I don't know. It was, and I got on I knew that it was a gay one, but I was on for just a few minutes and I didn't talk to anybody because I felt so weird about it. And I just, I hurried and got off and was like, I can't believe I did that. And then just tried to let it go. Tried to really focus in on my Mormonism and my testimony and what I was supposed to be doing.
Did you come out to anyone before your mission? No. Not your bishop, not your mom, your dad?
No.
Nobody.
I hadn't done anything. And I still truly believed. I can even vividly remember the faith that I had that if I just would go and serve, it would go away. And I remember the night before I left on my mission, I was on I'd already gotten kicked out of my room, and I had this air blow-up mattress, and I prayed for hours. And I believed that this would be my test, and if I would go and I would serve, and I wouldn't be lazy, and I wouldn't cut corners, if I would just go and knock every door and give my all, that it would go away. I truly believed that it would. And so I remember making little covenants. I'd just gone through the temple and thinking, okay, we can make these covenants with God and these promises, and I promise you, God, I will do what you're asking me to do, fully believing that it would go away. And
had someone told you that it would, or?
I don't know if there was one person that actually, because I never had told anybody about it, but it was more just, you pick up people and different people talking, and especially at church on Sunday and different quorums, I had just developed this belief that it would, and that's really all that mattered to me.
And what year did you go on your mission?
2004 to 2006.
Okay.
Served in England.
Okay.
Had a great mission, worked incredibly hard, and didn't struggle at all on my mission. I just was very dedicated. And
weren't attracted to companions or anything?
No, none of them.
Stayed focused on the mission.
Yeah, just stayed very focused, and we worked incredibly hard. The church is, it struggles in England, and you take the wins when you have them, and came home, went to BYU, Idaho, and that's where it started to come back. It started to be a lot more intense for me.
So BYU, Idaho.
Yeah.
All right. So what'd you do with that while you were at BYU, Idaho?
I just stayed so busy. I remember my freshman year, I would get, there was this banner on the BYUI website, and it would change with different programs, and I would go and sign up to be a volunteer in anything that I could just to stay busy. I worked jobs. I would work any job that I could. My crutch was just to stay busy. If I was busy, then I wouldn't think about it, and I wouldn't have time to wonder,
turn it off.
Yeah,
the Book of Mormon musical says. Yeah.
Right.
So how'd you get married?
Well, I
wait. Is there stories before that? So did you didn't try and date a boy secretly at BYU, Idaho, or anything? Okay.
Never would have.
What'd you study?
Communications.
Okay.
And that's when I got into radio. So I think it was my sophomore year. I was trying to be a surgeon. I wanted to be in medicine. And I had an experience where a little girl had died in one of my internships, and I knew I couldn't do that. And on the way home, the DJs that I'd listened to growing up in Idaho were like, hey, we're doing an open audition. And so I turned around and went to it. And at this time, it's interesting to me even looking back at that, because I was very shy. Matter of fact, I just saw a friend of mine who I haven't seen since high school, and she's like, she saw my video on my Facebook page that I was gay, and she's like, that's it. I always wondered what was wrong with you because you were so shy. And I was very shy. And so I don't know what prompted me to go, but I went and was hired as a weekend DJ. And so that's pretty much what I did through college. And all night long, I would go to the studio and just practice and practice and practice to be as good as I could be. And no dating. I would go on little dates. I remember one
with
date.
Girls.
With girls? Yeah, strictly girls. And one time I went and picked up a girl, and I remember her name was Mariah, and she said, literally, we were driving out of our driveway, the apartment complex, and she said, something about redheaded. She has redheaded kids or something. And I would look for every excuse to be like, no, we can't go on a date now. Because it was so awkward for me.
So pickiness was your way of
dealing with it and
and avoiding.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
There was nobody good enough.
Right.
So I couldn't get married because of, And then I got a call. I don't want to say his name, but somebody in the church that I looked up to pretty aggressively. And he said, hey, I just noticed you're not dating anybody. And I was like, well, I think we should talk. I want to talk. And I trusted him enough that I could tell him. So I went and met him and told him. He was the first person I ever told that I had struggles. And they said...
how old were you at the time?
23, between 22 and 23. And he said, you just need to get married. You're not gay. You're not flamboyant. You don't sound gay. You don't act gay. You can't be gay. And I remember him asking me, have you had sex at all? And I said, no, I haven't, I haven't done any of that. And that was his the world is changing and we get these ideas that we may be different. And so I think you're not. You just need to get married and everything will be fine. And the other advice that I got was to not tell my wife when I did get married, because his explanation was that it would make her question and it would make our marriage not really solid. And so immediately I took the advice. I was like, that's my problem. I just need to find a girl and get married and have sex and have kids and start this, this next chapter.
Now you're wanting to protect this person's identity. It's sounding like a conversation with the bishop. You don't have to confirm or deny that. But
it wasn't a bishop.
It wasn't a bishop.
No.
But it was
like a bishop.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so I went back to BYU, Idaho, and a couple nights later, I was talking to a girl that I knew from my singles branch in Shelley, and she wanted a ride. It was around Thanksgiving, and I gave her a ride home, and we talked, and I remember thinking, maybe she's the one, maybe she's the girl, and we laughed, and I kind of liked some of the things, because I would overthink everything, and I was just like, this is what I need to do. So we started dating, and within 4 months, we were married. Got married.
4 months?
Yeah. At BYU standards, at the time, there was 1-2 month engagement, marriage. It was fast.
And
I think we dated for 6 months. That's right. We dated for 6 months and then engaged 4 months after that. Or we got engaged and 4 months after we got married.
So
that makes sense.
Dating her, trying to kiss, trying to kind of explore your feelings for each other. What was that like for you?
I didn't really have anything to compare it to. It was hard, but it wasn't like a lot of my life I just believed. I believed so much that this was going to happen, that it was going to go away, and it didn't matter to me. And I think my belief is two people who love each other and care about each other can make anything work, right? If they're both giving and loving and willing to compromise, I believe that there was a possibility to make it work. And so I didn't even question. And looking back, it sounds ridiculous to get married not knowing. I do love her as a person. I did love her as a person, but not in the same way. I'm married now, and there's no comparison. Yeah.
So you just kind of said, you white-knuckled it. You said, we're going to make this work.
Yeah.
And you didn't tell her before you got married?
Did not.
And did you tell anyone else besides this person?
No.
This person was the only one you told?
Right.
Okay. So you got married within 10 months of meeting her. Yep. And then what was it like being married?
Got married in Rexburg, the Rexburg Temple. I remember driving home and being very nervous about, honeymoon stuff. I'm in radio, and it was a time of radio where we couldn't leave. So we're in ratings, and you can't leave. And so I got married on a Friday. We had a few days in a hotel, and we were going to go right back to life and then go on a honeymoon later. And I remember being very nervous as we got to the hotel room and being almost feeling determined, like I'm going to make this work. I don't care how hard this is. It's got to work. It's going to, and I think secretly hoping that it would be like, aha, I'm not gay. I've been worrying about this all along. And that was stupid because I'm straight and I'm normal, right? I think that's all I wanted to be, is just whatever normal was. And I remember it took 10 hours that first night. It was incredibly uncomfortable for both of us. And I remember afterward we both cried, and I remember thinking, this can't be what this is not what I expected, and but hoping that it would get better. And I took my covenants that I made in the temple very seriously. And so it didn't matter what it was like. It didn't matter. That's what I was going to do. And I remember we left the hotel a couple days later.
Now, something 10 hours, that's tantric. That's great, but that's not.
No, not 10 hours of
it was 10
enjoyment.
Hours
it was 10 hours of just trying to get it done.
And I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
And one thing that people don't talk about, there's attraction, and this is my daughter, my oldest daughter, did research on this. There's attraction, and then there's aversion.
Right.
So someone can have anywhere from no attraction to a lot of attraction.
Right.
For the same sex or the opposite sex. But then in parallel, they can also have aversion. Mm-hmm. So you can have no attraction, but also no aversion.
Right.
Which means it's not something you're excited about, but it's not something that repulses you either.
Right.
Or you can have no attraction and some or a lot of aversion, which
right.
means it's actually sickening to you, or,
yeah, and
or
I wouldn't
disgusting,
say,
or
right, and I wouldn't say that was the case. It wasn't sickening at all. It felt very forced, and I mean, I remember thinking, just what's everybody's struggle, like not being able to do this before marriage, because it was
there's nothing.
there was nothing there that really enticed me at all.
And I know for me, it was just like I couldn't wait.
Right,
you know what I mean?
right,
And that's a
right,
totally different
right,
experience.
Right. Yeah, and I've had that experience now. But yeah. So we got married. I remember her family wanted us to live very close to them, and so we lived four doors down from their parents, and we drove. It was a Sunday, and we drove in, and we had all of our presents at her parents' house, and we walked in, and I was in my sweats, and her mother said, "What are you doing in your sweats?" And I was like, doesn't everybody put their sweats on after church on a Sunday? I mean, I thought that was pretty commonplace. It was a day of rest, right? And she goes, "You need to go home and change." And I had not seen the side of her mom before. And I remember feeling like, whoa, so I went home and changed, came back, we opened presents. I remember a few days later, I came home early from my job at night. I was a night DJ, came home early, and I opened the door, and her and her dad like jumped. And I was like, what's going on? Well, she was writing a check from our just brand new joint checkbook to her dad to go on some trip or something. And she was trying to hide it from me. And there were a few things that was just like, beyond the gay thing, it was like, we are not working. We are not like in the same place as each other. Deception seemed to be like a commonplace, and she just was very sad, very, very sad. And a couple weeks later, she started crying. I think she just got out of the bathroom. She started crying, and she said, "I have something to tell you. I'm pregnant." This is like 3 weeks later. And I remember being like, what? How can that even be? And so at that point, I was like, it doesn't matter. I don't care where I'm at, what's happening here, what the traction level is. I have a son. I found out later it was a son, but I have a kid. And I'm not going to, my parents were divorced when I was young, and I just was not ever going to be that. I did not want to ever leave my kids. And so I guess I went to this place that was just like, you got to do it. This is what you got to do. This is what you signed up for. Doesn't matter. You forget about how sad this is and how hard it is. You need to focus on this. And so I worked a lot, and it seemed like they were fine with that. She and her family were fine with that. They had their own way of dealing with things, and I felt like the oddball out. I wasn't always kind of contentious with her mom, and it was tough. I mean, as I look back on that, it was tough. And a couple months later, so we had Rustin. Rustin was born, my oldest son, and I remember seeing him thinking, for sure, this is love. That was the first time I'd ever really felt loved and felt like I loved someone else. And it got easier for a while, and then all of a sudden, out of the blue, she was pregnant again. And we weren't having a lot of intercourse. I mean, there wasn't a lot of that was happening. And so I remember thinking, holy cow, this is like, this is insane. And in the process of that, we were not doing well. I would sleep on the couch most nights. I would make sure I'd be home to feed and play with my son before he went to bed, and then I would go back to work. That happened until when Anderson was born. It kind of hit this new level of contentious with me and her mom contention. They don't like medicine, so they're the types of Mormons that are, Bruce R. McConkie type of Mormons that just, a whole new law. And even then, it's never good enough. I remember my ex-wife said she was crying one day, and I was like, "What is wrong with you? I'm trying. What am I doing wrong?" And she was so sad that she wasn't perfect. And in that, I was trying to teach her, just, what do you think the atonement is for? but she didn't believe that she could even use the atonement, that wasn't for her. And, I'm a convert to the church in a sense. I mean, I'd been there since I was 8, but still I didn't have the family upbringing and I hadn't been surrounded by that. And so it was really kind of threw me for a loop. And when my youngest son was born, we were in the hospital, and that was a compromise because they want to be, no doctors, no midwives, do it in the bathtub at home. And I'm in medicine. And no, I'm not going to do that. That's not an option. And I remember my wife broke her tailbone in the birth of my second son. And he was crying profusely. He was hungry. And they were working on her tailbone. She was in a lot of pain. And the nurse said to me, hey, do you want to just give him a bottle? And I knew that was no way that was never going to happen. Only natural breast milk is the only way to do it. And I remember the door flung open because the baby was crying. My son was screaming. And she's like, oh, it's going to be fine, the nurse. And I was like, well, just be careful because if you go out there, her mom is out there and she's going to see the bottle and she's going to freak out. Well, of course, the door flung open and her mom was just glaring at me. And the nurse brought the bottle in and she came in trying to stop it. Like she knew better. And so 4 months after that, I got a job for the church. I started working for the church at Deseret Book Corporation, the corporate office. And their music department.
In Salt Lake,
yeah. And gave up my radio job, moved my family to Salt Lake from Idaho because I was trying to make it work. We were at the depths of, just despair. And I thought if I could get some distance between her family and our family, not like a controlling way, but just some distance so we could have our relationship, that it would work. And started working for Deseret Book. I had never had a faith crisis before that. Never questioned, never doubted, never looked at, I remember one time when I was young, they were like, don't read anti-Mormon doctrine because you'll be smitten, just being afraid of it. And when I got here, I was already in kind of a weird place. I was losing my marriage, I thought. And, the best way to describe it is a few months after we moved here, I remember walking into we had a townhome. And I walked into our townhome and I have a really special relationship with my kids. Always have. They were very, very excited to see Dad coming home. And I was just in this fog, this dense emotional fog where I couldn't feel happy. I couldn't feel sad. I couldn't feel anything. I just was surviving. And they were like, Daddy, and they were screaming excited. And I remember thinking, I have absolutely no emotion. I don't even feel good or bad. And I remember feeling sorry for my kids that I was in this place. And a couple months after that, I remember working I was asked to attend a meeting for the Mormon Tabernacle Choir. And I was sitting in this meeting. I had to do a presentation on some of their digital platforms. It was right around the time Deseret Book was not selling as much music in their stores, and so they were iTunes and Amazon trying to get the music on there.
Around what year would this have been, maybe?
2011, 2012.
Okay.
And I got married in 2010, so it hasn't been very long. And Sherry Dew was in the meeting, and I'm sitting there, and I had just, done my thing. And I had talked to Sherry many times. And some figure came up of how much money the choir makes. And she's like, wait a second, who are you? And I was like, Sherry, I'm Dusty. I work for you. Hello, do you not recognize who I am? And she goes, if you ever reveal that number, God will smite you. And I just remember thinking, holy cow, where's this aggression coming from? I'd never seen that. And I think in some sense, you look at these dollar figures and you're like, there's so much money here. Why is this so important? And I think the other part too is seeing how important money was to the church. Really bothered me. And I think it would bother anybody. It doesn't bother me as much now that I understand it, but all that was hidden from me. In Idaho, I was just, a little farm kid out in Idaho, and seeing that, I was like, this is a lot of money. And why do we care so much about making money and bottom lines? And, even in religious music, it was so aggressive to me. And I remember just feeling very scared, but also the opposite of the Spirit. It's like that. This is not what I would imagine what the Lord's church would be doing. And then I started to get into podcasts. I think I found your podcast at the same time. I would listen to it on the train, and I would start asking myself some questions. And one day, I don't remember what podcast it was, but I just finished a podcast, and I was sitting out by the train, and I was also very defensive of the church in listening to these podcasts. And I was sitting right out by Temple Square trying to catch this train, and I saw this stream of people walking outside of the church. And I was not considered a church employee. I was a DMB employee. So we're different, but they wear white shirts and ties, and they all have a separate name tag.
DMB standing for?
Desert Mutual, a business or something. The DMA, or I can't remember. Desert Mutual. They're for-profit arm. And every one of them that I saw was walking out of the church was drained, sad, empty. And it was like this aha moment. What are we doing? Why do I feel this way? I'm working for the church of Jesus Christ. And everyone around me is sad and drained and empty inside. Not everyone, but the people at that moment, it was like very telling to me. And so I got into the CES letter, and I started looking really aggressively into this stuff. And at the same time, my marriage was just in shambles. I mean, just was not doing well. And I remember I got an offer to move back to Idaho Falls to be back in radio. And I took it without even thinking. And moved to Idaho Falls, and moved there with the intention of kind of giving Rebecca an ultimatum, my wife. Either we do this a better way, we find some happiness. And it really wasn't about the gay thing. It was about us and our marriage and happiness and finding, we're told that this is the time to prepare to meet God. And I didn't feel like we were doing that. And I didn't want to be a bad dad, and I didn't want to lose the joy of that this life's supposed to be about. And again, it really wasn't about, I would have moments, there was this pendulum swing of, I would have moments where I would really focus on, I can't be true to myself, and this is hard. I can't, how am I supposed to do this? Nights just praying to God, asking for help. And then for the most part, it was a lot easier. For me, for my particular case, I didn't really struggle with it. And then I would have this cycle where I would struggle with it a lot, and then I would kind of get better. And we moved to Salt Lake, or moved to Idaho Falls. And
around what year?
This is spring of 2013.
Okay.
And
really quick.
Yeah.
One of our listeners, Paul, wants to know if you want to reveal the number that the choir made.
No.
Okay, that's what I thought.
I don't want God to smite me.
Sorry, Paul. We
don't
want Dusty being smitten.
It's a lot.
No smiting going on in Mormon Stories.
Right.
Okay, all right.
And I knew that when we moved back to Idaho that we would probably get divorced.
This is 5 years ago.
Yeah. And that was hard for me. And we moved to, I remember we went to church a few times in this new ward in Idaho. And I finally said, I called my mom in the middle of the night one night. I said, we need to talk. And she's like, okay. My mom's not a member of the church. Well, she's not active. She was a member of the church when she was young. And we went to McDonald's. And I said, Mom, I have something to tell you. I'm gay. And she was like laughing at me. She thought it was funny. I was joking. And I remember I was like, no, Mom, stop. This isn't funny. She'd laugh a little bit more. And I was just bawling. It's like 11 o'clock at night in a McDonald's, just bawling and, shoving French fries in my mouth. Like, I'm gay. Just listen to me. And she had never wondered. She said she had never never crossed her mind. And I don't know what to do. I'm with Rebecca and I are struggling. And, I love my mom so much, but she couldn't really help me with what I was struggling with the church, and I had somewhat of a faith crisis, and just felt really alone, And so I think a few weeks after that, I called my mom over one night, and I said, Mom, I need you to come to the house. I need to tell Rebecca. And I knew as soon as I told her it would be done. I knew it. I just knew as soon as my ex-wife found that out, it would be done. And sure enough, my mom came over and I said, Rebecca, I have something to tell you. And that was it. And we actually separated.
What did she say?
I don't remember. She wasn't happy. And I remember feeling a lot of guilt for not telling her before that. And I still feel that. I still feel an incredible amount of guilt for not telling her the truth. I've met many people who are in the same boat that haven't and don't. And I'll talk about that later, but I just remember feeling incredible guilt and sorry for her. And my dad was sick at the time, so I left for a little bit, a couple weeks, came back, and I was ready to work on it again.
The marriage.
The marriage. And I walked in the house, put the boys to sleep, and I was there every night. Never missed a night, but I would leave at night. I wouldn't stay the night there. I would just be there for the boys until I put them to sleep, and then I'd leave. And I said, okay, so where are we at? And she goes, you just need to give my family another chance. It was all about her family. It wasn't about us and our relationship and our marriage. It was all about her family.
She thought you were leaving because of her,
I don't
because
know.
of the in-laws.
No, I don't think so. I just know that she was in such a weird place that all that mattered was the acceptance of her mom and her family. It wasn't even about us at all.
Wow.
And I remember kind of snapping a little bit. And I remember I slammed my hand on the ground. I'm not an aggressive person at all, but I slammed my hand on the ground and I was like, this is not normal. And I was done. And I met with my stake president, and we were getting ready to get divorced. We didn't do attorneys. We were very cordial, very easy divorce. Not an attorney was spoken to. Gave her everything and just pretty much left. But I remember talking to my stake president. He said, I need to see your temple recommend. And I said, I've not done anything wrong.
So you hadn't, Craigslist,
No.
Secretly tried to date or mess around or...
No, I mean, maybe a few times I would try to find other people that were struggling with the same thing, but never, no.
And did you try North Star or Affirmation?
No, I'd heard about North Star. Even then, I mean, I've heard worse things now, but even then, it didn't seem healthy to me to be cuddling with other men, right? It didn't seem like that would do a good thing for me.
With other married men?
Yeah, just in any way, other men that you can't do anything more than that, but you can open the door a little bit, but not all the way, So I never did any of that. And
so as you ended your marriage, you had never experimented
no.
In any way romantically with a man?
No.
Okay.
No. Like I said, would try to message a few people to get to know them. Text lines. I think maybe I did look at Craigslist once and sent a message to somebody, but it never went further than that. Not even multiple messages, because I would always feel afraid. I remember, and this I guess is right after that. If you're taking my temple recommend, then I'm not worthy of wearing my garments. And so I remember...
Yeah, what did he say in response to you saying I'm worthy?
He just needed to take... I think my mother-in-law... I kind of felt like my mother-in-law had gotten to him. I didn't tell you one thing, too. I remember blessing my second son, and my mother-in-law told the bishop that I drank Dr. Pepper and wondered if I'd be worthy to bless my son. I mean, just...
So your in-laws were kind of like ultra-Orthodox, almost
so.
fundamentalist, Idaho, rural Mormons.
Yeah, they were from very far up north in Idaho, and...
it's almost sounding like Terra Westover kind of territory.
Yeah. And so I gave him my recommend, and I told him, if you take this, I'm done. Well, I just need to see it right now. We'll talk about it later. And a few weeks later, he tried to give it back, but I was already done. I'd already taken my
tried to give
off.
it back?
Yeah, he called me and wanted to meet with me to give it back. I didn't want it. I remember right before I took my garments off, I went to Walmart to get just regular underwear, and being very afraid that God would somehow, I would not feel the Spirit, or I would not feel normal, or I would not feel good. And it was the opposite of that. Now, I did have my faith crisis continued. And so the analogy that I use is, you hear Elder Oaks, and I've talked to thousands of other gay men in Affirmation, and where they say, I was doing everything the church said to do, and I was so unhappy. So I have developed this analogy. I don't even know if it makes sense, but there's cups. We all have these cups that we have to fill in our lives. Spiritual, social, whatever, love, right? And we're told as gay Mormons to only fill your spiritual cup. Your love cup cannot exist. So you fill the spiritual cup hoping that it's going to be enough to make you happy, to make you feel not even just happy. It's not about like, oh, I deserve to be the happiest person in the world, to feel normal. But your love cup is completely empty. And so a lot of us leave the church because we have no other option. We feel like there's no other option. We tried celibacy, we've tried marriage, it's not working. And we try to fill our love cup, but then our spiritual cup gets thrown away, right? Like, well, we can't be spiritual. The church says we can't do this. So we're only filling our love cup, but there's this big hole of spiritualness that you love, that you want, that is important to you.
You shouldn't have to choose.
You shouldn't have to choose. You should
between
be able
your
to have
faith
both. Exactly.
and your love, your sweetheart.
Yeah. And so I started to fill my love cup a little bit, not sleeping around, but just getting to know other people, getting to meeting other gay men who were struggling. I never slept around because I didn't feel like, I think I was always afraid of getting something because I had done enough research to know that once people leave the church, they kind of go off the deep end and they start doing all sorts of crazy things. And I have 2 kids. I have a life that my actions will affect my kids. And so, but I definitely got very low and I started to doubt God. I started to doubt that he was there. And then on one random day, so I was probably in that stage for about 1.5 years, just alone. And for May 19th of 2015, I was going up the Malad Pass. My ex-wife had moved to Logan with my kids, and I was going to see them, going to get them, in fact, because she was going on a trip to Cancun. And I sneezed and coughed at the same time on the Malad Pass, and I felt a pop in my head. And didn't think anything of it. No pain, really. I remember thinking, whoa, that was weird. Like in the pop in the side of my head, deep inside my head. And I got to Logan, and my son came running to me, and as I went to pick him up, fluid poured out of my nose and literally filled up my hand. And I was like, well, I wasn't swimming, but my kids, and I'm excited. And we go back to Idaho, and every time I lean forward, I'm getting fluid out of my nose. And they eventually get me to the hospital to do some tests. Now, keep in mind, I have my 2 kids. I don't trust really anybody with them. I'm very protective of them, and so nobody was watching them. I felt like I needed to be strong. And they said, well, let's just do some tests. So they did a spinal tap, and they found that I had no CSF. So CSF is cerebral spinal fluid in your back. It goes through your head, and then it kind of circulates through your nervous system. And I had none in the very base of my back. And so called my mom, called my ex-wife. I bring her back from Cancun very quickly. I had a CSF leak. I was leaking brain fluid out of my sinus at a very rapid rate. So they got me to Salt Lake City. They did 1 surgery. They said, oh, we've got it. There were 4 areas where they could see in my sinus that I had not very much bone. And so that's where there was leaking. They patched it. Everything was fine. So went home. I got spinal meningitis. Rushed back. They did another surgery. Oh, we've never had to do more than 2 of these, they said. And both of the surgeons up there at the U had never had to do more than 2 in the 20 years they'd been there. Got meningitis again. They did a 3rd surgery. 4th surgery, and then my 5th sinus surgery to stop my CSF leak, and they all failed. And the doctors are like, I don't know what's going on. This is crazy. So then they get me to IMC in Murray, and they were getting ready to do a craniotomy. And all this time I'm still on the radio, trying to raise money for people who are struggling. I've always felt like my place is I've never felt like I'm that cool radio DJ, but more just about trying to give back, trying to remind people that we can do hard things. And Ellen's boyfriend, Tate Anderson, I don't know if you know of that little boy, but Ellen calls him her boyfriend. He's 7. He had a heart transplant at Primaries. A few months before I got sick, this little kid came up and gave me this big hug. And it really had a huge impact on me. When I was sick, I thought they were happy his mom was still functioning, even knowing that he could die. And I felt like it was an opportunity for me to realize that they can do hard things, I can do hard things too. They did my first craniotomy March 11th of 2016, and that failed. Second one failed. Third one, I got an infection. So they basically cut a hole in your skull this big, and they removed the plate, the skull piece, and then they put it back. But I got an infection. A few days after my 2nd surgery, my eye was swollen shut, and I was just very sick. Go to the doctor. They'd be like, oh, no, it's CSF. You're fine. So they'd send me home. Doctor, come back to the ER. No, it's CSF. Go home. It was basically home to die. And the doctor called me in Pocatello. He said, hey, I just don't feel right about this. Come back. So I came back literally on my deathbed. They stuck a needle in. I had a high fever, all blotchy and red, and it was infected. It infected. So they rushed me to Salt Lake. Told my family everything would be fine. I wouldn't have to have surgery again. Even though I was still leaking CSF, that would be a while down the road, and they would get this infection cleared up. Family, friends left. I was all by myself in Salt Lake City. And 5 a.m, they come and get an MRI, and they rush me back to my room, and I'm kind of getting ready to go back to sleep, and the nurses run in. Hey, Dusty, we're here to take you to surgery. I said, no, you're not. No. No, they said I didn't. I had had 7 surgeries, 2 craniotomies in the course of 2 weeks at this point. And I said, no. No, they said I wouldn't have to have surgery. They're like, no, you have to right now. I said, no, I'm not having surgery. The doctor runs up, Dr. Joel McDonald, and he says, Dusty, this infection has gone through the plate. So it's literally sitting on your CSF sac that we just barely had cut open. This is serious. You may have a breathing tube when you wake up. You may have your skull missing. Like, you may not even survive this. And at that moment, I was incredibly angry. That was the first time for me where I was like, what the hell is going on, God? Why am I in this situation? I've been a good person. I've tried so hard. Why am I here? Just anguish, intense anguish. So they're rushing around, throwing stuff on me. They're signing DNR paperwork and signing all this stuff, fully believing that I was not going to survive. As they're rushing down, people are staring at me. It's hard to explain the anguish that I had in my heart and in my soul for my kids. I guess that's the best word I can describe it, anguish. And I had a spiritual experience on my mission that I thought I'd been praying to know the Book of Mormon was true. And several months after, we knocked on some random door. And I remember getting really emotional. This is on my mission. Sorry, I'm kind of backtracking, but I remember we knocked on some door and I felt this incredible warmth. And I remember looking up to the sky feeling like, okay, the Book of Mormon's true. I know it's true. And I always felt like this when I tell people, you need to read the Book of Mormon to know it's true. I promise it's true. I always struggled with that because I was like, I don't know. So after that point, that was the only real spiritual experience that I'd ever really had in my life. And so I'm anguished, I'm frustrated, I'm angry. And we get down to the surgical floor and they're just ORs everywhere. And I'd been in there enough to know that they always take me to the exact same OR. It's the neuro OR. And they wheel me past it and they're running. And I'm crying, but I remember thinking, that's weird, they're not going to that same OR. And they just keep going out. And the hospital's IMC is all glass. And I remember I could see the end of the hall, and it was dark, pitch dark. It's like 5 a.m. And I'm thinking it's dark, and I'm nervous because any moment they're going to push the drugs and I'm going to go to sleep. So I'm like anxious about that. And out of nowhere, and ORs are cold, right? Out of nowhere, this incredible warmth and this incredible light, this like the sun. And it wasn't like, you know, how it gradually comes up over the mountain and it gradually lights up. It was the most incredible light that I'd ever seen in my life that was peering through the window. And I felt like God was there saying, I got you. Quit worrying. I know you're mad. I know you're angry. This has not been fair for you, but I'm here with you. I love you. And that was the first time in my life I'd ever felt loved by God. Because I was gay. And we hate gays, right? They're bad. Oh, I'm sorry. And so, I mean, talk about bipolar, right? You go from being incredibly sad and scared to feeling this love and comfort and warmth of God. Doctor comes out. Dusty, we're going to put you out. I said, okay. I had no doubt. I had no doubt that I was going to be okay. Came out of surgery, realizing I had a breathing tube. feeling for my head. I still have my skull. 2 doctors walk in, the surgeon, the neurosurgeon, and his name was Dr. Webb. And he said, Dusty, why didn't you, so 2 weeks before they wanted to do a shunt. And I didn't feel right about it. So they knew that the second surgery had failed. I was still leaking CSF. Sometimes they put shunts in to relieve the pressure so then your body can kind of heal itself. And I just felt wrong about it. I just didn't, and I even when I would like kind of think about it, maybe even slightly pray about it, it felt wrong. And the doctor was like, no, we got to do it. If you don't do this, like he really pushed me hard. I was like, no, I just need to go home for a few weeks. I've been having all these surgeries. I just need to go home. I felt that deep inside my heart and my soul. And so Dr. Webb and Dr. McDonald walk in and they said, why didn't you do the shunt 2 weeks ago? I was like, what? I didn't even remember what they meant. Like, what are you talking about? And Dr. McDonald was like, you did not want to do a shunt. And why? What? Why? I said, I don't know. He said, if you would have done the shunt, you would have died at home because the infection was already so prevalent inside the skull. It would have just gone through your brain. You would have fell asleep and not woken up. And in that moment, again, this is after the surgery, I felt the same warmth that I knew that God was there. And, you know, looking back, it's hard to think about anything more powerful than that sudden embrace. But for me, even more powerful than that was, so I'm divorced, I'm alone, not sleeping around, not really, I'm kind of having a faith crisis, but still not enough that I'm out hooking up with anybody. And I just remember feeling God's love. And it changed my life. It really did. From that moment on, I wasn't done. I had, that was 7, so I had 15 surgeries total. And so it took them, May of 2017 was my 7th craniotomy, still having surgeries. But from that point on, I was better emotionally, and I at least knew that God loved me, so then I could start to find. I started looking at affirmation. I started meeting other gay men. I started asking questions. I would come to Salt Lake. And I remember the first event that I went to Salt Lake, I was like, there was this house party full of all these gay LDS men, mostly middle-aged. And I remember thinking, these are normal guys. It blew my mind. These are all normal people. And what is normal, right? But I had always defined this gay as this flamboyant feminism that I never judged it, but that's just not what I was. And it made me feel kind of alienated from where my people were. So I had another experience, my last surgery, where the doctor came in and basically said, Dusty, here's the thing. You've had so many of these surgeries that you have scar tissue. And because of the scar tissue, if we pull this off, there's a 80% chance you'll lose your memory. But the problem is you're still leaking CSF, which gives you a very high chance of bacterial meningitis. And if you get that, you die. What do you want to do? And neurosurgeons are, like they're just cold. They don't have emotion. Hey, I need to know in an hour. See you, bye. And he walked out. I don't have much family support. I never have. So I was alone. And again, not as deep and not as much anguish as before, but just, how am I supposed to do this? I have 2 kids, and I had this picture of my boys up on the wall. And I remember just thinking, how do I choose to leave them or to be a burden to them? Because I would basically be a vegetable for the rest of my life. And sliding glass door opens up. This lady, so old, she had so many wrinkles, just like everywhere, like Shar-Pei, like dogs, just wrinkles. But she had bright red hair and was in scrubs. She said, "Here, honey, are you okay?" And I'm a guy, and no, I'm fine. I'm okay. She's like, "No, I'm here to help you. I'm here to help you." She walked around my bed and sat on the foot of my bed. And I remember she touched my leg. I'm in a hospital bed in the ICU. It's all locked down, all these glass windows around, and people dying all over the place. And she goes, "I'm here to help you." So I just started talking. How do I do this? What about this? Why am I in this situation? Why have I had 15 surgeries? Just kind of, just throwing up all of my emotions. And she stopped me and she said, you already know what you need to do. And I did. I knew that I needed to do it. I felt complete peace and confidence in that. She came and gave me a hug and left. Doctor came in. Okay, what's your decision? I said, I'm going to have the surgery. And he was surprised. Okay, I guess we'll see you tomorrow morning. Friday morning, they went in, started cutting my head, and every time they would go ear to ear, all the way over. And this time, started cutting right here. And he says he doesn't really know why. This is his story. He starts cutting around. And about the time he gets over here, he thinks, well, what if we go in on the side? Because they'd always cut this off. And that might relieve some of the scar tissue. So they take this off, and there's the hole that they'd been missing the whole time.
There's a hole in your skull?
So then there was a deformity from that initial pop, a deformity through the tissue that was allowing the CSF to leak into my sinus. And then after they with all my sinus surgeries, they had a hole in my septum that was making the fluid come out of both sides of my nose. Patched it, took a big piece of fat out of my leg, patched it. I woke up, didn't taste CSF again. And I tell that story, this is important because it took that for me to admit fully. I had told a few people. I told my mom that I was gay. I don't think I had told my dad at this point, but a few people knew. But that was the time that I was like, okay, I believe that God is there. I believe that he loves me. Regardless of whatever I am, he loves me. Now I just need to find out what I need to do. Do I need to be celibate? Is there somebody that has been celibate that's made it work? So I started going to these meetings. I started asking some of the most incredible people that I'd ever met in my life. These little get-togethers and of these normal people, right, that just happen to have same-gender attraction, that just happen to be gay. And I remember this 80-year-old man walked into this house party with these 30-year-olds. And again, just very normal, like a bachelor party type thing without the alcohol, right? And he walked in. You could tell he was very old. He had a few other older men with him. And we were talking, and suddenly he came up. He's like, hey, I'm so-and-so. And I was like, hey, nice to meet you. And then his friend said, tell him your story. And he goes, no, I'm good. He's like, no, you need to tell him your story. And he goes, I have been celibate my whole life. And I was like, no way, you have not. Like, I didn't believe it. 80 years old, completely alone. And I just picked his brain for 20 minutes. What does that look like? And I remember the very specific thing he said is, I'm mad as hell. He had shock therapy that the church had prescribed. He had done everything the church has said. He still to this day is an active member of the church. But he's angry because he's alone. And he's been alone. And he's coming to these parties with young men because those are the only people he has. His family's all raised kids. He never got to raise kids, and he's alone. And so I just started asking questions. And I met people. I remember this. I was really, I don't want to say disgusted, but bothered by these open marriages. And even more so by these unopened marriages where the wife didn't know, but the men would just be sleeping around and not tell anybody and not be open about it. Go to church on Sunday, and then all through the week, they'd be hooking up with different men. There's these open marriages where the wife knows and allows her husband to go and have sex with men and come home as long as they stay married and they look the part to the church.
Are these Mormon families?
Oh, yeah.
In Idaho?
In Idaho and Salt Lake. And then I met two specific, I won't say their names, I don't have their permission to, but I met two men that live here in Salt Lake who both were married to women, both have kids, who have gotten divorced and now married to each other. And I remember we went to some get-together, and then we went to their house, and it was normal. And they were normal. And just seeing them interact with each other, they were just normal people.
What do you mean by normal?
Yeah, what is normal, right? I mean, it's hard to describe that, but I guess just the typical Mormon home and principles and
values,
morality, values. It's important to me to have that. In the gay community, it's very, and maybe I'm wrong in this, but it seems very, I can't think of the word, but you got to look great. You got to have the great body. You got to have this, that. It's very judgmental amongst each other, and a lot of people sleep around with a lot of other people. They don't want to just be with one person. And I'm not saying that for everybody, right? I know there's a lot that do, but my perception at the time was that was what gay meant, and I didn't want that. And
you wanted a monogamous,
committed relationship. That was the only way I would have ever done it. And I kind of lost my train of thought there, but yeah, that's kind of where I was.
You met the couple.
Right.
And it was normal.
Right.
It felt normal.
That was normal, and I was like, well, maybe this can work because I'm
Were they still
asking
in the church?
questions. They are.
Were they still in the church?
They are still.
They're still in the church.
Yep.
Oh, wow.
And have not been excommunicated.
Wow. So there was a role model, literally a Mormon gay couple.
Absolutely.
There was a role model.
Absolutely.
Here in Salt Lake.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so I started talking to them, and this is my thought process. I remember sitting in the car, kind of having a personal, just like evaluation. Okay, do I know anybody that's made celibacy work? No, I don't. There were a few prominent members of Mormons and gays that were on. Oh, well, I'm celibate and I can feel God and I know, but they weren't because they had tried to make moves on me at some of these events, so they weren't, and that bothered me even more because it's giving people out there, these young men, and that's the reason I'm here today, John, is because there are men out there, young men, who are struggling. The pain is real, and they're committing suicide. It's not right. So does celibacy work? No, it does not.
And so these people that the church was putting out on their website as being celibate,
they weren't being celibate.
Were messing around.
They were.
And maybe some of these mixed orientation marriages that the church was putting out.
Same time Josh Weeds came out. He had just given his post, his, and that was what we were all talking about. Oh, this isn't working. And so I was like, wait a second. So now mixed orientation, they're not working. That's not an option. Celibacy is not an option. It often leads to suicide. I have more to think about than just myself. If I get to the point where I'm going to commit suicide, what about my kids? And am I going to be a good dad being alone, right? Am I going to be happy? Am I going to be in this fog? I'm thinking about all these things, and I see this couple, and I had heard of a few other couples, and I was like, I don't know if I'm ever going to find somebody good enough. Not good, not good enough. I hate to even use that word, but somebody that has the same values that I have, that wants the same things that I want. And I mostly had resigned to just probably end up being alone because I wouldn't find somebody that fit that. I mean, I often talk about Tate as a perfect puzzle piece that I definitely believe. It couldn't have been any different for him to fit right where he fit. So I was just trying to be a role model. I was being a little more open about, I told some of my close friends that I was gay, but definitely wasn't sure if I would ever find anybody, and that's when I met Tate.
What year was that?
That was last year, last part of last year.
2017.
Yeah, the very last part.
Okay. And did you attend church during that span?
Off and on. Yeah, I would never go to the same ward, so I would always go to just different sacrament meetings. I didn't want to go all the way, even though I would pay tithing. I would just leave my envelope with the bishop, and would hear him walk out, or I'd leave it under his door, because I was still struggling with whether or not I would even, what is a gay Mormon? Am I allowed to be there? I mean, I know that, we got to love each other, but you hear talks like Elder Rosa's the other day, and you're like, what? I don't know if I'm supposed to come. There's all these things that you tell me I'm supposed to do. I was talking to Tate about this earlier. Let's say you're an apple, and the church comes and says, no, you have to be an orange. But I'm an apple. I'm made differently. I'm not an orange. No, God wants you to be an orange. Okay, how do I become an orange? We don't know. We don't know how that happens, but you're supposed to do it, so do it. Okay, I can't do it. I'm trying to do it. I want to do it. I will do anything required to do it, but I can't do it. And it doesn't, I mean, it breaks my heart that there are men and women and kids and adults that are committing suicide over this. I understand it perfectly. What are you supposed to do? And then you at the back of my mind, I keep hoping. Maybe I'm not expecting to be married in the temple tomorrow, but maybe we can tone down the aggression a little bit. Maybe we can tone down the rhetoric a little bit. And you think maybe some of the new prophets, or maybe some of the, because I've heard some of the younger apostles believe that there will be change. But it's not happening.
We didn't mention the November 2015 policy. That would have happened after your divorce.
Yeah. I remember hearing about it, and I remember Tyler Glenn. I'd always followed, I'm a radio DJ, so I'd always followed Neon Trees, and by doing so, followed Tyler. And I remember when he was talking a little bit more about being gay, I was following him very closely. And he said something about, I remember his video where he was just emotional and ranting, and he said, "I'm done." And I was ready. I even looked up online how to write the letter and leave the church. I never could bring myself to do it. But I remember that very, very clearly. And I remember thinking, because in this sense, they're saying, "Oh, we want to protect the kids from going and having, being told that their families aren't right." But let's change it a little bit. My family didn't go to church. We're quite anti. If I hadn't had the upbringing that I've had, I would not be the man that I am. I believe that. I wouldn't be who I am today. Just because your parents choose something doesn't mean. And then, afterward, why would you make your kids condone? So it's not my understanding that when they do get baptized at 18...
You're saying that a kid shouldn't be limited because of the choice of their parents.
Right. They should be able, if they want to go to church, they should be able to go to church.
And you're saying that a kid should never be asked to denounce their parents' love.
So my kids are getting ready to be, I almost have an 8-year-old.
Because at the time November 2015 happened, you had 2 kids. Mm-hmm. You were considering whether or not you'd ever be married. And that policy applied directly to you at that point.
It did. And I didn't understand it at first fully. I mean, I think it's my understanding that because they have a mom who goes to church, that the policy doesn't affect them. I don't know if that's the case or not, but I still have to think about my kids are going to have to publicly denounce my marriage to somebody and they love our life, our homosexual lifestyle is normal. Our kids are healthy, are strong, are loved, are treasured. They love their stepdad. So to think that they will have to publicly denounce what we're doing, what does that do to them? Even at 18, what does that do to them? It just doesn't make sense. Oh, we're doing it to protect somebody. Help me understand that. Who's that protecting? It's not protecting the LGBT community. It's not protecting that in the closet young man who's gay and doesn't think that he's ever going to be able to find happiness. And that's really the point of this here, because I believed that for so long. I believed that I would never find happiness, that I'd never be worthy of happiness, and that God didn't truly love me because he made me. I mean, God controls everything, right? I'm gay. I am gay. It's not a choice. It's not something I could choose. It's not something I could change. It is who I am. It is a massive part of my soul and my being. And it isn't like some people, and we've been out now for a couple of months, and we get some questions. It's not like it's not some dirty sexual thing. Sex has very little to do with it. It's a connection with my husband that I would not get if I were just, doing what the church told me to do. It's frustrating.